All right, there we go. Okay, so again, good morning to our CMHCers and a special welcome to Renee for joining us. This morning, we have the pleasure of hearing from Vivian Morgan, who is not only our presenter, but also our beloved colleague at CMHC. So I have a formal bio that I'll read, but I kind of just want to say Vivian is awesome and she can start, but we won't do that. To honor her professional work, I'll go ahead and read her bio. So Vivian specializes in work with children, young adults, and families. In her work, she utilizes a family-centered and person-centered model to guide clients toward their full potential. She considers the family piece to be an important part of understanding ourselves and others, and has great respect for an individual's capacity to learn, explore, and find meaning in the process of therapy. Vivian believes that families can be a great source of understanding issues and in moving towards healthier and happier family system of support. She has her master's degree in clinical psychology from Alabama A&M University, and she has completed additional coursework from Loyola University, Towson University, and Johns Hopkins. Vivian works with adults who are eager to explore their own family history, family dynamics, and family of origin experiences that shapes who they are today. And she helps adults process trauma and attachment issues that may have originated in these early relationships and which then affect them in their relationships today. So with that, I will pass the baton to our speaker, Vivian Morgan, who will teach us about family systems. Thank you, Vivian.
Oh, thank you so much, Shannon. I appreciate that. I hadn't read that bio in a while, and it's so fitting giving our presentation today. And, you know, I first became acquainted with family systems in an internship in my master's program, I guess it would be the early 1980s. And at the time I was working at a Gunnersville mental health clinic, which was this mental health clinic in Alabama, just outside of Huntsville. And the person that I was under with my internship that I was working under, he had been well-versed in family systems theory and had studied with some of the people from the Philadelphia Child Guidance Center, which you may have heard of. It was the kind of brainstorming around family systems interventions in the 50s and 60s. And I learned a lot. We were in therapy rooms where there was a phone and there was a one-way mirror. And on the other side were clinicians who were watching me work with clients, and they would call and the phone was yellow. It's so funny how I got that funny memory that they would call and say, Vivian, did you ask this? Okay, that I would have to, it was just such an odd way of learning how to do the work that we do. And of course, we moved way on past that. But anyway, fast forward, 25 years, and I'm working in systems and not really thinking much about it. And I took a class at Loyola on family therapy and was reintroduced to it. And immediately it resonated with me. And I've since taken some courses at the Bowen Center, which is in Northern Virginia. It's not a far drive at all. I've spent the night, done a couple like their spring and fall conferences. They have a lot of free stuff online, and the link is included in my slide deck if you would like to look into that. They have a spring conference coming up. So what I'm really hoping today is to introduce you to this idea, if you haven't already heard about it, maybe my take on it. And so there's some concepts that go along with the theory, and introduce that in the context of some cases that I have, and hopefully get you to work on at least beginning to work on your family genogram, the first couple levels, and see if you have any questions towards the end. And we may be able to combine genogram with Q&A. I don't know how people feel about that. If it's too distracting, I don't want to do that. I want to honor the space, but this is the first time I've presented on family systems theory. So I'm just not sure how quickly I'll go through the slide deck. I have a little bit of, not sure what to anticipate there. So we'll be a little fluid with the time as we get to the end. but I can also stay after the hour for some Q&A if it doesn't fit in neatly into the hour, okay? How does that sound? All right. I'm going to share the screen now, Shannon, okay? I need to be host enabled. Okay, I see it.
Okay. Still loading.
Okay, and I think I need to swap, but let me know if I just want to make sure I need to swap the settings. So thanks
Okay.
everybody for your patience. This is my first time using PowerPoint. I usually use Google Slides, so I'm low on the mastery ability here.
It's still on the preview mode.
Okay, I'm going to swap.
Okay.
How are we doing?
There we go. Yep, all set.
All right, perfect. Okay. All right, so I told you a little bit about how I was introduced to family systems. And what I'm really hoping today is to, like I said earlier, go over the core concepts and introduce this idea of a therapeutic goal being the differentiation of self and what that might look like for your clients. And the importance that Murray Bowen, who introduced this work, the importance he places on this differentiation of self. And then lastly, I want to introduce you to genograms if you're not familiar with them. Hopefully you are, and that you've seen them along the way. Most people have seen a genogram, but maybe they haven't really used them. But I will show you how I use them in my work. So what is Bowen family systems theory? So it's a concept of looking at the family as an emotional unit. And this was derived from psychiatrist Murray Bowen's study of the family. He initially studied people who had schizophrenia who were on an inpatient ward, and he was the psychiatrist on that ward. And he had families come and stay there. And he initially just started observing those interactions. And from that created this system, and it became his lifelong passion. Bowen examined the interlocking concepts of the family's emotional system and believes that the system is the driving force for psychological problems that exist within the individual. These relationship patterns are represented in many social systems and geopolitical systems in our world. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that when we get to the concepts. So what is the role of the therapist as we examine these different concepts? So Murray Bowen says, I believe and teach that the family therapist usually has the very same problems in his own family that are present in the families he sees professionally, and that he has the responsibility to define himself in his own family if he's to function adequately in his professional work. So this really speaks to doing our own work. And I love that it becomes a tenet in actually doing the work, that you need to have done this. And what you'll find when you go to other family systems presentations, especially at the Bowen Center, I've seen this, is that many of the practitioners will talk about their own evolution within their family. And I may drop a little bit of that today. I'm not sure how I'll feel about it, but as we get there, I may share a little bit of my own differentiation within my family and the growth opportunity it has provided me. But at the very least today, I'm really hoping that you'll start to look at your relationship within your own family. So here's the 8 concepts. We're going to talk about many of these, but some of these I'm not going to go into any detail, so I want to just mention them briefly now. The family projection process, that's that's the whole concept that whatever the family's emotional unit is experiencing, everybody in the family is experiencing it together. That it has this domino effect. And the multi-generational transmission process refers to how this the way we interact, this interaction process, this relationship posturing, he calls it, we actually pass this on from generation to generation. And you can use genograms to explore lots of these different types of relationships, including like addiction, family injuries or illnesses, diseases. So you can actually have a theme that you're looking at with your genogram to note how the family passes on these various ways of managing anxiety. And the emotional process in society, that's the last one, that really talks about how this interaction process, this emotional unit, really extends beyond the family. So you'll see it happen at workplaces, you'll see it happen with the politics in the world. And really right now you can see triangulation happening with the Ukraine and Russia. And the Ukraine, there's a great, obviously, tremendous trauma happening, and trying to pull in other people to help. And that's exactly what triangulation does, is it says, I can't manage this anxiety alone, please help me. So Murray Bowen does look at triangulation as being a stabling factor in relationships, but that these are really a process that exists, not even just with humanity. People that study Bowen theory will study it in animal behavior, bee behavior. I've seen it studied in all different kinds of different animals. It's fascinating, actually. So I love this quote by Murray Bowen. It's so hopeful. That which is created in a relationship can be fixed in a relationship. And there are times when we feel like, because of the level of anxiety or trauma, that a relationship is hopeless. And he does not feel that way. And I think it's just a beautiful place to start. So homeostatic balance. And I do want to mention, I'm sorry, just to interrupt myself, but if you have a question and you want to put it in the chat box, Shannon is monitoring that for me, and she can bring it up at an appropriate time that I can answer that for you. So homeostatic balance. The Bowen systems theory believes that within a family constellation that you are trying to maintain the balance of anxiety and peace, let's say, that you're constantly trying to maintain this balance. And because of the desire to maintain this balance, we will take on certain roles in our family to keep this in check. But I also see happening is when this balance is out of order is when people come to therapy. When something has happened either within the family system or outside the family system that affects the system in general, people come to therapy. And they're seeking to reestablish this balance, and they're not sure how to do it. So when we talk about anxiety in this particular work, it's a little different from how we look at anxiety in other parts of psychotherapy. So in family systems, anxiety is neither good nor bad, and it's not quite equivalent to what we call stress, although it involves feeling stressed. It is this normal biological emotional response to situations or even reaction. So this is that strong reactivity that we have when we are confronted with a problem in a family that we're not feeling quite settled about. And the family takes on all these different posturing and positions to try to regulate this anxiety. So anxiety could be a feeling of depression or not knowing what to do about a depressed family member. It doesn't have to be how we define anxiety in the rest of our work. So systems thinking, and I like to introduce this idea because I do think that system thinking comes into everything that I do as a psychotherapist. And I think that every psychotherapist really should learn about it because it is a powerful way of viewing an individual. So family systems theory is that it's the family, not the individual, with the emotional system. And the individual participates in this emotional system within the family. And they learn these patterns of behavior very early in life. So when you have an individual in your office, you're really working with the entire family. And in fact, I've seen it and I've done it. When you work with one person in the family unit, you're working with the family. So when I was, during COVID, when I was working directly from home, I'd have people say, oh, I want you to see my son. I didn't see anybody younger than 8 online. And I'd say, well, I can work with you. And I work with them on parenting, or people will call and want to do family therapy, but certain people in their family didn't want to participate. That's okay. I can work with you, and we are doing family therapy. And this is why, because when one person shifts, everybody shifts in the family. And that leads me to this metaphor. And I use this all the time when I'm introducing family systems to clients. And that is the family systems is like looking at your family, like it's dangling on a mobile above a baby's bed where you have the different levels, right? And they're all attached to this one string. And there's these different levels. And what happens when you move one of those pieces on the mobile? The entire mobile moves, right? And this is what happens in family therapy. The biological process, they look at emotions as a biological process, that it's just this reactivity. And now that we have all this wonderful work on the mind body connection, we know that sometimes we're just feeling an emotion in our body. We haven't integrated it yet. So even back then, Murray Bowen was aware of this process, that we felt it, but we didn't quite understand it. When these feelings in the body become conscious, we can talk about it and we can start processing it. And that's what you're doing in therapy. So fusions, this is just another word for enmeshment or codependency. And it happens in a family in an effort to reduce anxiety. So one thing I really love about Bowen's theory is that he sees these patterns as adaptive. So here's what some of these patterns look like. The first one's conflict. We all have conflicts with people. It happens. It's a natural part of being your authentic self. And it might involve projection, blame, or criticism at some of the more higher levels of conflict. And what you have here on the screen is squares tend to, when you're doing your genogram, you'll see the squares represent somebody who, a male or somebody who identifies as a male. And the circles represent females or somebody who identifies as female. And I don't know if they have, and I meant to look this up. I bet there is a new type of diagram. Maybe it's a triangle or something for people who don't necessarily identify as either. That I bet systems work has come up with that because they should and they would be attuned to that. But I'm not sure what that is, I have to say. And so that's conflict, is basically between two people when the anxiety gets so high, and it's represented by this kind of jagged line. And when you do your genogram, you can indicate that if there's conflict between these two people. So if the conflict gets too big, it can lead to triangulation. And this is what happens when two people are having trouble compromising or coming to a resolution. They will then deflect to a third party. Sometimes this third party is a child. Sometimes it's somebody outside the family. You'll see this with two adults might go to a friend to talk about problems within a marriage. Sometimes it involves a legal system, people going through a divorce, they go to their lawyer. So this triangulation can be seen in lots of different places. Another way to deflect anxiety is to distance. Distancing, and really all of these are appropriate at times. We've all had an argument with somebody and we felt like, oh, we need a little space from that person, you know, let me just give a few days before I reach out. I just need some space. And excuse me, I'm getting over a cold and I'm gonna pop in a lounger. Sorry.
That's actually perfect, Vivian, because I have a question.
Okay.
So I've noticed with clients, particularly young adult clients, sometimes their parents will triangulate to them to deal with marriage conflict. You know, one parent might vent about the marriage to the child and then the other does. Would that be considered triangulation, or no, because the child is technically in the family system of the nuclear family?
No, that absolutely is triangulation.
Thought so. Yeah.
So actually, when I'm referring to people outside the family, I'm just referring to the fact that triangulation is a common way to manage anxiety. But Murray Bowen in Family Systems does look at triangulation within the family.
Right. Thought so. Just
Absolutely,
wanted to get
that
clarity.
happens. Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure.
So yes, that happens a lot. And if we work with children, we see it a lot. What'll happen is the child will become the identified patient. Because if you can imagine, and we'll get to it a little bit later, if you're having trouble managing your anxiety in your relationship and you go to your child to help deflect this, child's ability, you know, is not going to be, shouldn't be as strong as yours. So they really can't handle this amount of pressure. So it leads to problems in the child often.
Right, right. And in grad school, I remember writing papers about triangulation with younger children. But what's interesting now is, again, working with a lot of young adults meaning 20 to 30, if you will. I've noticed a shift in the family dynamics, and that the adult child almost becomes a friend to the parents, right? So now it's not only triangulating as a child, but, oh, you're an adult now, you can understand this, can't believe your father's doing this, you know, and so the client feels so confused, like, am I your friend, am I your child still? And then holding their own anxiety. So that's been an interesting shift.
Yes,
To
you're
recognize.
right, that does happen a lot. I can't see everybody, but I'm sure we're all nodding. But we're going to talk about that in a second, Shannon. That is absolutely 100% true. And there are some tips that you can offer for that child to be able to step out of the triangulation. And truly, in order for a child to emancipate, taking a child development model, they really need to be able to do that. And it's unfortunate that so many parents don't really realize the harm they're doing to their child by pulling them into that emotional triangle. It's not intentional. They're trying to reduce their own anxiety. But I could say it's a little selfish, but I still don't think it's intentional. All right, the next one is the distance and cutoffs. So this is when you just need that break, you just need space and time. And sometimes when there's been, like, you know, just a serious grievance or offense, abuse, maybe toxic, there's this cutoff. And the Bowen system doesn't advocate for cutoffs because you actually can increase your anxiety during a cutoff. And I've experienced a couple of these in my life. And it's true. During the cutoff, you end up thinking a lot about the relationship. Maybe you keep rehearsing why that person deserves to be cut off, what they've done to you, justifying the cutoff. And obviously, in, you know, in circumstance of abuse or extreme toxicity in a relationship, every right to do that. Just know that you are probably going to be thinking a lot about that relationship until you process and integrate that event. But that he really believes that people should try to individuate and come back to these relationships in a whole place and reestablish those, because it benefits the family as a whole. So over-functioning and under-functioning. So there's a reciprocity here. Sometimes you'll have families where or a client where you'll see them, doing so much in their family, and they may very well be over-functioning. And I think that we reward over-functioning in our society. The more we do, the more success we have at what we do. It's just so much. But just know this, where somebody is over-functioning in a family, chances are they are crossing a boundary of the person who's under-functioning. So you really want to achieve more balance in that relationship. So I'll just stop here for any questions before we go into, I'm going to talk more about triangulation and cutoffs. I'm going to check my time too.
Yeah, we're about halfway through. And Susan just popped in the chat. Can a temporary cutoff be needed to heal, even with the hope of reuniting with family in a new way with stronger boundaries?
Nicely said. I like that. Yeah, I think so. I know I've had to do that too. I think that we all need space sometimes just to be able to understand a situation better, and that's completely okay. And especially if there's toxicity or abuse, I think that you have to listen to that internal place that tells you what your anxiety level is, and you're trying to manage that, integrate the memory or the circumstance that happened, and process that. And when you get to a better place, you will be able to revisit that relationship again. I've seen it and I've experienced it, and you can do it. But I do think that that's very appropriate, that you do need that time and space to do that. Cutoffs are very tricky in Bowen systems. I think they're very kind of controversial. Okay, we're expected to understand and manage our own family systems. And we want our clients to be experts on their own family. So we're kind of educating them along the way. So this is what a fused family looks like on the left. They're reacting to each other all the time. They're upset. They're, somebody's over functioning. Somebody's reacting to them being in their business. You've got conflict. So the more fused a family is, the more conflict there is. And conflict can look, like distancing, arguing, triangulation, all of those. And what you want is this idea that you can be yourself within the context of your family and regulate your own thoughts, your own feelings, let people know where your boundaries are, and execute that within your family system. So here's some of the roles that we play in our family. So it's kind of, I don't know that everybody plays a role in their family, but I think a lot of people do. The princess, the peacemaker, the golden child, the scapegoat, the black sheep, the caretaker, the standard bearer. The standard bearer is somebody who kind of takes on the family mission, so to speak. This is a person who follows in their father's shoes, or, takes on the family business or something. The baby, the sick one, the strong one, the victim, the hero, the fixer, the rebel. And so these become adaptive initially, but we really want to try to get people to recognize that role, because family systems believes that where you play one role, in your family, you will play that role lots of places in your life, and it no longer can be adaptive. And it may not, as time goes by, be adaptive in your family. And I can introduce my own experience here. I, like many other therapists, was the kind of the hero in my family. I was the rescuer in my family. I don't see the rescuer on there. I don't. The rescuer is a big one. The rescuer should be on there.
Maybe hero or fixer.
Yeah, the fixer. So I played that role in my family. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Amber has a question whenever you're ready. Would you like me to read it now, or did you want to continue about your family system?
You can read it. I can come back to it.
Okay. Amber says, what does the theory of family systems have to say in regards to found families? Let's say for the person who was cut off from their biological family.
Say about, what was the first sentence? What does it have to say about?
Found families, FOUND.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Like finding your own family.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I have never seen that asked before. So I don't know if I feel adequate to speak for the entire, group of family systems therapists. But I think we belong to many families in our lifetime. And if you find a family, a tribe, so to speak, where you belong and fit in, or accepted and valued and validated, and you're not finding that in your family, that is a very healthy thing to do. But the family systems theory would still suggest that you contact your family. They may not feel like family, but at least remain some type of contact with them so that healing can take place within the family. So I was going to share that I was the family rescuer. And, I became a therapist, as you know, and, I found that this role kept coming up in other parts of my life, and I really wanted to work on this. And of course, this is many years ago, this is my 20s. I started creating some firmer boundaries around that. And what I found was over the years that my siblings became less resentful of me. I didn't know that they were resentful, but I sensed that they were. That I was in some way over functioning and fixing things that maybe they could fix. And what happens when you're a rescuer is you're assuming the other people can't do that themselves. And so when you start creating those boundaries, work on the self and what you can do with your life and your abilities, and decide to help when you want to versus when you feel like you should, what you find is that your family rises and are able to solve their own problems and come to their own solutions. May not be yours, but that's okay. They have volition and autonomy to create the life that they want to. And now I have a very healthy relationship with my siblings. I'm very grateful that I tackled that issue of myself and my role in my family. So triangulation, I'm just kind of I wanted to get to cases, but we're starting to get to that now. Just keeping an eye on my time. Yeah. About 10 more minutes of slides and I want to get into our genogram. So we were talking about this earlier. So the triangulation happens when there's a primary relationship and there's a lot of tension there. And that person in the primary relationship reaches out to the child in this case and pulls them in for support and becomes enmeshed with the child. And the other parent or the other person in the primary relationship is left out of that relationship. And it actually can increase the tension in the primary relationship. Now, sometimes I'll see a child come into therapy where they have an underlying issue. And that issue itself causes tension in the family, or may trigger one of the primary relationships, that one of the parents, to in recollection of their own family dynamics, they become triggered and this unhealthy reaction happens between parent and child. Either one, a child being thought of as worrisome or like they're a problem, that actually creates problems for the child to be thought of in that way. And it increases their anxiety too. So you have this child who thinks they can't do it on their own, that they need their mother, but they don't want to need their mother or father. So it's this conflicted relationship that happens. So here's a case study in that. So I'm working with this child, he's 5th grade, came in with oppositional, arguing with mom all the time. He's ADHD, he's defiant, tantrums over homework, tantrums over lots of stuff. Anytime mom, wants to propose an idea, he argues with it. Mom herself is over involved, she's over functioning, she's constantly solving problems for the child. And once again, giving the child this notion that they can't solve it themselves, over explains everything all the time. And dad, in the reciprocal relationship, if she's over involved, then he's under involved and he's under functioning. He can be critical of mom, but all in all, he has this calm, kind of collected presence for the family, this grounding presence. So with mom, I did a lot of work with her family of origin and looked at how some of these patterns, her being the rescuer, the good one, the caretaker within her family, the problem solver, and how that impacted the way she was parenting, and how the issues going on with her child were triggering these childhood relationships with her family of origin. And it was very helpful to her. So what I did therapeutically is I created space in the therapy room for the child to problem solve and gain self-control. Statements like, well, you're in charge of your feelings and your thoughts and your behaviors. I think you're capable of doing that. I believe that you can manage your feelings. And I offer the child choices in changing their behavior. Mom wants to jump in and fix. I'll say, well, hold up. What do you think? He would often look to his mother. What do you think? Well, I want to know what you think. What kind of ideas do you have? Let's brainstorm. Empowering the child to make decisions on his own, provided education to mom around her need for autonomy and this concept of enmeshment. Oftentimes when a child is needy and has behavioral, emotional, or learning issues, one of the parents will get very involved in the child's needs. Comes from a good place, but when the child gets older, they want to start solving these problems on their own. So I felt comfortable sharing the concept of enmeshment with her. And she said, what do I do? And I said, anytime you can insert space into your relationship, that's a great way to go. And we're going to do that in the therapy room too. So she came back maybe 1 or 2 sessions later and told me that she asked the dad to take over doing home chores at home, which were really a place where there was a lot of tantrums almost on a daily basis. And that was brilliant because mom came up with that idea herself and she initiated it herself. And I just told her how proud I was of her to do that, for her to do that. Because she's also letting go of this notion that she has to be the fixer, that she has to be the rescuer, that other people can support him in the family, and that he is responsible for his own decision-making regarding his grades. His grades are his, they're not hers. I also encourage mom to engage in self-care. Well, what are you doing this week to take care of you? And I introduced her to the concept of co-regulation. She had never heard of it. She also is a therapist, but she had never heard of that concept. It's okay. We really defined it and elaborated on it and worked on her own regulation in these family conflicts. And there was an episode of bullying at school. I was really surprised how little mom was involved in this problem. And I took an entire session to drive this home, that this is a place where you can be involved. Every child has a right to go to school and feel safe. And I think her notion was, well, my kid's really annoying. That's why people bully him. He says things and they bully him because, people are going to find that annoying. So it was an odd kind of thing, but I really drove it home. And I don't know exactly what happened, but the next section, they came back and the school was notified and things were much better at school. And he even said, there's no bullying at all. It's really weird. So I was like, that's good. You ought to be able to go to school, feel safe and be yourself. So that's a success story there. And here's some tips on triangulation. Shannon, you were mentioning a client that you had. Avoid taking sides. Insist on one-on-one communication. In other words, if somebody says, oh, you're gonna have to tell them yourself. Create some distance from the problem. I've had to do this with my siblings. I've had to say, listen, I appreciate that you're going through a hard time, but I don't want to hear that anymore. I literally said that, and it was like, that's the last I've heard of complaining about the other sibling. You'd be surprised at how little you have to do in the family to get your boundaries met. At least I was surprised. Don't keep secrets or accept information. Avoid listening to criticism if you can. Kind of cut the conversation short, change the subject, and stay connected to the other party. So when you're mentioning the daughter of your client, Shannon, that she remains connected to the other parent, and to take responsibility for their own actions, reactions, feelings, and thoughts. Birth order is super important in family systems. So cool when you start doing genograms.
Vivian, I'm going to hop in here for a second
Mm-hmm.
to honor a question from Renee from about 8 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
She said, does it happen that a person plays more than one role in their family, or is there one essential role that they often play?
Yeah, probably yes and yes. I think there's more than one role you can play.
Okay.
I do.
All right. And then Heidi says, thinking of how mental illness, for example, borderline, impacts the system and how it magnifies family roles.
So true. So true. And there could be scapegoats in a family, right? Like, oh, you're the one with the problem. Wow, that's you overreacting again. And so what happens is that child begins, in these very early years, begins to believe they are the problem and that they overreact to things. And when you have that script in your head, that kind of becomes who you are. And so we often will, in our sessions, focus on how the client's functioning in this moment. And I really, it seems like people are getting it. I really want to encourage you to go back to those early years and how did you function in your family? You can even pull up the slide. Do any of these roles sound like you? Sometimes I will introduce roles to my clients. Sometimes I'll make that leap myself when I'm doing my genogram. Sometimes I'll do a genogram for my own benefit. I don't necessarily show the client. I don't know if there's any other questions or if that answered that question.
Yeah, that seems sufficient. Thank you for taking time to answer those. And we're at 10:50.
Okay. So let me go. I didn't get to do it as many cases as I wanted. Here's cutoff on distancing. Here's questions you can ask to get information from a family about what was it like to be a child in your family? Who demanded the most attention? You can certainly go back to birth order with your clients, and you'd be surprised at how accurate this is. Honestly, I love birth order stuff. It's fascinating. If you ever want to consult on a case that you're having to see if you can apply a family system lens, please let me know. I love doing that. That's fascinating to me. You might see yourself in here. There's positive and negative things to every place in the birth order. Birth orders can contribute to roles that you play. Remember, they're adaptive. The goal is differentiation. Always being aware of the role you play and your relationship to people around you. And this is how you move towards differentiation with your client. You see that they're fused in their family system and they need to be more autonomous. They need to respond instead of react. How do you do it? You identify the triggers and these emotional patterns, the triangulation, the cutoffs, the distancing, the reciprocity of overfunctioning and underfunctioning, and you educate them, explore how your client reacts to them, and then choose a different response in tune with how the client wants to be. How would you like to be in this relationship? How would you like to feel when you're talking to your mother? What kind of relationship do you want to have with your siblings? You can have that. We can get you there. And I have this picture of this woman, cool as a cucumber there. And because that's, you want to feel like you're a part of the family, but all of that anxiety that's going on with their lives, if they can manage it, they can handle it, and you can you're in charge of yourself and your feelings. And that's where the boundaries come in. Here are some I statements for differentiation. I apologize for whipping through these really fast, but I love these. These are great. You can get your clients to read them, or you can just read them yourself. But basically giving yourself permission to create the life you want and to change the role in your family. One differentiated person in a family can change the whole family, and I can be that person. I can explore relationships in my family in a way that helps me respond and not react. You're not going to be able to change your mom. You might, but that's not the focus of your self-development. Here's a template. We're going to get to the templates. Here's a drawn template. So this is what you guys are going to be doing today. I can't see you guys, but maybe you can help me with this, Shannon. Has everybody seen a genogram?
Yes, I got a thumbs up from Katie, head nod from Kathy. Yep.
Okay, so everybody's I feel like they've been around, we've seen them. Let me go to the other one. I might be able to see a little clearer. What I started doing with children was I started asking them to pick 3 crayons, 3 different colors. And one color would be who you're the most like. One is who you have the most conflicts with. And the third color is who you feel like you can talk to if you need help. Now you can use these other lines too, the conflict meaning the squiggly line. Divorce is usually just the regular line and just a slash through it, double slash. Distancing is the dotted line. The cutoff is the dotted line with the 2 space marks, more dotted line. And then a death of a family member, you actually put an X in the square or the circle. So here is the one that's drawn. And with kids, I'll usually draw a picture of a dog or a cat in case that's somebody that they, go to for help. And let me just look at the time really quick. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, you guys. Poor pacing on my end. But here's an example where somebody did that, and then we'll go back to doing yours. So this, I call this the bullseye. This was a 16-year-old who had some social anxiety and was struggling with relationships. And I started calling it a bullseye when I would see the person you're most like, the person you have the most conflicts with, and the person that you can talk to are all the same person. And chances are in those relationships, there was enmeshment. And this one was for sure. She was so enmeshment with mom that she was struggling making those connections to other people. And so, of course, that became the focus of our work together, was for her to make meaningful connections outside the family and focusing on that and her ability to do that. And when, solution focused stuff, when were you able to do that? When's the next time that you can do that? How did you feel when you were connected to people at school? And really spending a bulk of our time emphasizing that. Sure enough, she became, much more social and she went away to college and I stopped seeing her, but I saw her for a couple of years. But see these questions, who are you the most like, most conflicts with? So that's why I asked you to bring the 3 crayons. Let me go back to this one. So let's go ahead and start with your piece of paper. And you'll start with you and your siblings. And if you think you want to include your children on this, go ahead and start that in the middle of the page. If you just want to stick with your family of origin, put you and your siblings at the bottom. And it goes oldest on the right to youngest on the left. So you can go ahead and start that process on your own paper there. And I have time here to hang on to answer any questions.
Okay, great. We have quite a few people who have to hop off or have already at 11, but that would be helpful, Vivian.
Yeah.
And Kevin asked if a copy of the slides will be provided.
I can share that with you, Shannon, and you
Okay.
can send it out. Yeah.
Great.
There'll be some other case studies on there that we didn't get to.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Katya.
Is there any question that anybody wants to ask? The next move on your genogram would be to move up to your parents and any step parents to be included as well. I will usually ask occupation because sometimes it's interesting to me. I will also include if I think they played a role in the family. I usually don't do that if I'm going to be sharing it with my client to color in. I'll just put the occupation or how often they see them. If you go up to grandparents, they see their grandparents on holidays. I might write that in next to the grandparents. Sees on holidays, or I might indicate where they live as well. And you can see here next to mom, I put her mom's best friend. So sometimes there are people who are like family. As you're growing up, you might have called somebody aunt who was really just a friend of the family, but they were significant in your life and in your mom's life, and I will include them. I'm looking through the questions now. Adding the dog or cat. So I see here that that question about the found families was somebody was cut off from their biological family. I think that's very hard. If you didn't choose the cutoff and you were cut off, cutoffs can be very damaging. So I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm sorry I misunderstood that. I thought they were electing to cut off from their family. But if they were cut off from their family, that's pretty harsh. I think that's very difficult. My heart is hurting for that person right now. Would anybody like to share what's come up for them if they want to? Yeah, that's a good, I'm sorry, Amber asked again about, she wasn't sure if Family Systems had any research to found families. I do not know that, Amber. They might. I don't want to say no to it because they might, but oh, I'm so glad that whomever that happened to found family. We need families, right? We need people that love us, validate us, and we can count on to be there for us. And so just totally validate whoever's going through that experience. 100%. So difficult. Mm-hmm. Shannon has a hard stop at 11:10. Oh, here's my, okay. What time is it? For some reason, I can't even access my clock on my thing. Oh, it's 11:02. Does anybody want me to move forward on any slides?
I just wanted to share a quick thing that I had going through this genogram is that it emphasized that how we're defining conflicts might be hard for some people. So like, while I might have people that I don't like to talk to within my family because of differing opinions, like I'm still in contact with them. So it's just hard,
That's
I guess,
okay.
to define a cutoff like that.
You can be in conflict with someone and not have a cutoff. So even with, absolutely, that's why I sometimes call them silent cutoffs or silent conflicts, because maybe as a child you can't say anything, but you really don't like this person. And even as a young adult, you may not like something somebody says and you don't say anything, but I call them silent cutoffs. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. Who do you get in the most conflicts with? And these can be silent conflicts too. A conflict and a cutoff are not the same thing. A cutoff is distancing, when whatever has happened between you and the other person requires distance. A conflict is, can proceed for sure, a cutoff, but you can have a conflict without a cutoff.
Okay. I really like the concept of silent conflict because I think that applies very heavily to
Doesn't it?
my family as a whole.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Anybody else want to share anything? Thank you so much, Amber, for being, asking the question and being open to being vulnerable.
Van, it's Gina. I have a question. How would you define like a difference between distance and conflict? Is conflict more where you're kind of getting into it, with somebody, and distance is just more of a separation?
Yep, you got it. Yeah, conflict, but it might be a silent one, but you're not avoiding them. So distance is when you're avoiding the person, you're deliberately choosing not to visit them, not to see them, you're not spending as much time with them. Where you used to engage with them a lot, you're like, no, I'm saying no to more things. You are putting space between you and the other person.
Okay, but it's not a complete cutoff.
Right, not a complete
Okay.
cutoff.
All right, thank you.
I was on a supervision call last night where somebody was talking about stonewalling because it comes up with the Gottman stuff, right? And I see stonewalling as a way of distancing. Like, I can't talk to you about this. I am just not going to do it. And that's, so you can live in the same house, right? And you're there. But if you're stonewalling, you're distancing. So it's really fascinating, and it's used a lot. I would like to do more of my own research on cutoffs, but it's, as you know, if anybody's done Gottman, stonewalling is one of the signs of the four signs of the apocalypse.
Four horsemen.
Four horsemen. Thank you. So it's really not helpful. but it's a protective factor. So you got to look at, you can look at that in a family system lens. I thought that would be fascinating, and I brought it up in our supervision group. Anybody else? Oops.
I would like to share something, and I'm just noticing how different this looks for me from maybe 7 years ago,
Hmm.
2 years ago, and now. People
Okay.
have passed, I've gotten healthier, and set some boundaries, and just, my mom has dementia, so my ability to communicate with her is different. So just that it evolved. It was very similar for most of my life into adulthood. And then in probably, yeah, I would say 6, 7 years, it's extremely different than it was for most of my life.
So interesting. And something you said, I'm not sure what it was, but it made me think of how the role we play in our family can sometimes relate to our birth order. You know, like the baby can be very creative, but can also be very rebellious, you know? So, and that's a role that you can play. The oldest is, you know, very responsible and, you know, high achieving, but can also be the standard bearer, or the person who takes on, you know, the leadership role with whatever the family's business or whatever profession is. If there's a family of lawyers, the oldest may become the lawyer, right? Or become the person who is the fixer. So I think that these relationships between birth order and roles are fascinating too. And I'm sure there's research out there on that. I just haven't read it, but I find it fascinating to even explore with your client. And I consider my clients to be experts on their lives. So I ask them a lot of questions. Anything else anybody wants to share? I know Shannon has the hard cutoff. It's 11:08. So you'll get the slide deck, everybody. You'll see this was an insight-oriented genogram here. And you'll see other ones. And on the right is a little explanation of what I was looking at in these genograms. So this is a more complicated one. But I want to end with this quote from Murray Bowen, which is, "You've inherited a lifetime of tribulation. Everybody has inherited it. Take it over, make the most of it, and when you've decided you know the right way, do the best you can with it." I love it. Very helpful. And here's the books I used. Anything by Roberta Gilbert is awesome. I have a couple of her books. I've done a lot of my own education around this theory. I love the birth order book, that Kevin Lehman, Total Expert, and the Family Genogram Workbook. Those top 3 are awesome. And here's links for more information about the Bowen Center. And also, if you want that template, that genogram template, I did it on Google Jamboard or Google Drawings, and you will have access to it. Just make a copy of it so that you can make your own with your client. You can do it with them or do it, whoops, trying to stop sharing. Or you can do it independent of them. Sometimes it just helps me to have a bird's eye view. Okay, so I don't know what you guys can see. I'm out of